Hey, and welcome to video number 5. In this specific video, I'm going to show you how to find Photoshop WordPress theme designers to do the work for you. So basically, they're going to take the mock-up design that we created in the previous video and create a Photoshop professional layout. And then in the future videos after this, there are some other steps. Basically, once you have that PSD file in hand, you'll have to find a WordPress programmer or developer to convert that into WordPress format. So basically right now we're dealing with the design and the layout. Now, I want to make sure that I cover a few things in this specific video before we jump in and try to find some Photoshop designers. Not everybody is going to come with the same end result. Some of you will find theme designers and then you're looking at the theme thinking, this looks nothing like what I wanted. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to get it as close as possible to a really good looking theme. So I'm going to show you how to find designers and how they think. You have to understand how they think, because if you don't, then you'll probably get them to produce something that's just totally different. Now, before I talk about that, let's talk about the sites to outsource to. Basically, where you can find professional designers to do this. Freelancer.com is a big site. It bought out Scriptlance.com and rentacoder.com. Now, I will say from my experience that I have hit or miss experiences. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's okay, it's not that great. Now, the only thing that I did not like about freelancer.com was they have a lot of upfront fees, and the fees can add up eventually. And let's say you have a really good experience, that's great. But let's say you have a really bad experience, then you're paying a lot of fees up front and you're losing a lot of money up front. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, Odesk.com is one of my favorites, and you can find a lot of designers on that as well as WordPress developers. Now, Odesk.com does not require you to pay any money up front, which is what I like, because they do deduct it from the freelancer, but you can find a lot of people, sift through a lot of people, and you're not necessarily liable for upfront fees. Now, I have found a lot of good people from Odesk.com, so I can definitely recommend them. Elance.com, on the other hand, was one of the original sites out there. Now, I don't have a lot of experience with Elance. I've used it once and I've had pretty good results, but with Freelancer, I would say I've had a ton of applicants and people respond, but elance.com, I don't get a whole lot of people responding. I don't know why, but obviously try whatever you want to try. Those are just my recommended resources. I would go with Odesk or Elance. Freelance is just hit or miss. So there you go. Now what I want to do is talk about designers. You need to understand how designers think. Otherwise, you're going to piss them off, you're going to offend them, and then the design that they create for you is going to be totally different. So designers, basically, they're going to need to have your mock-up, your structure, your expectations up front, and your vision. Now, the thing about designers, the really good ones, is they can do really awesome designs, but they're also going to need space. So don't try to micromanage them. If you micromanage them, you're going to remove their creativity from them. And if you remove their creativity from them, then they're not going to be able to create something beautiful. They're also perfectionists at heart. Creative people tend to be perfectionists. So they're very sensitive, and be careful about your blunt constructive criticism. If you're going to give them constructive criticism, make sure that you say everything you expect up front and then just gently nudge them. Say, hey, this looks cool, but could you change blah, blah, blah. What I want to do is teach you the sandwich method. Basically, you have two pieces of bread. Bread on top, bread on bottom, and the meat in the middle. Now, one of my mentors taught me this, and I want to teach you this. Basically, what you want to do with the sandwich method in giving people constructive criticism is to simply, on the top layer, give them positive reinforcement. Say something like, oh, I really like this design. Can you change this a little, but can you change that little thing? So the meat is kind of be the constructive criticism. And then the bread is going to be a little bit more positive reinforcement. Now, I know you're probably thinking, why in the world am I teaching this? But you've got to know this, you got to understand this, because if you do this, what I found is using these methods that I'm teaching you, I use these personally, that when I use these methods, designers and programmers a little bit different, but designers create something amazingly beautiful. And I've had a lot of people think, how did you do that when I did, they did this for me, and it was the same designer. But this here is basically it. Give your expectations up front, mock up structure, vision, as much information up front. Give them space, and then they're going to produce something wonderful. So with that said, let me go ahead and go to odesk.com and kind of give you an idea about how to create a project description and more. So I'm going to use odesk.com as an example. And what I did here at the very top, if you go to odesk.com and do a search, in their search box, I typed in WordPress designers. So I want to look for somebody who is a professional WordPress designer who has experience in doing this, because then they know all the dimensions and everything like that. If you find somebody who's not a WordPress theme designer, then they're not necessarily going to know all the dimensions of the WordPress theme and so forth. So that's why I make sure that you understand to be as specific in trying to find the right person. So if you go here, what I normally do is I choose somebody who has 4.5 stars to 5 stars. And what Odesk is doing is it's basically refreshing it and eliminating people that do not have that here. So I'm going to check this and this here, because I want somebody to have at least 4.0 stars. Hourly rate, I'm thinking max $15. Now, when you're dealing with odesk.com and this is the first time, or your first time dealing with somebody, I would not recommend that you go with an hourly rate. I'm just doing this merely because I'm not really interested in the people that want 20, 30, 40, 50 an hour. Click on more options here. Hours billed, I'm going to do at least 1 hour. That way, that means that they're not brand new. Last activity, I want it to be within 2 weeks. And this tells you basically when they actually were active. So if this was within 2 months, who knows, somebody could have not been active at all. And from my experience, that's not a good sign. Location, I would do any location. English level, I'd say at least 4 out of 5. If you're a different language, then of course that may not matter. But if you're going for English and people that can communicate well, you want to do at least 4 out of 5, because if you're trying to communicate with somebody and they're let's say 1, they're not going to understand what you're going to say. So you want to make sure that they understand exactly what your expectations are and then go from that point. Now, there's a big debate on contractor type. You've got independents and agencies. Independents are basically people who are individuals. Agencies are groups of people. From my experience, I found agencies are great. Independents tend to be lower and cheaper. But if the independent leaves, then you're screwed. With an agency, if one of their members leave, you still have the other members that can pick up the slack. So you've got to weigh your advantages and then figure it out. Is it you'd rather pay a little more money? I would go with agency. If you would rather pay less and you don't have a lot of money and take the risk, then you can go with the independent. But that's up to you, and that's just a disclaimer as well. Tests, I don't really care about tests. What I would do now is basically I would sift through everybody and try to figure out the top 10 people that I really, really like. Because if you go to each one of these, we got graphic, and another thing you got to figure out is in their portfolio, is that their actual work? The way you can figure out is it their actual work is by looking at a pattern. For example, if I go to the portfolio and they all look the same, then I'm pretty sure that they're probably developing it. But if one looks really ugly and then the other one looks very, very professional, I'm going to ask them about that. And if they say that they developed it within a matter of, the same month, I know that they're going to probably be lying to me. So you got to do your due diligence beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to set yourself up for failure. So go down here, take a look at this. And basically all you want to do is take a look at their WordPress themes. Like I would say this person's design here looks somewhat professional. A lot more professional than the other ones. So once you figured out the top 10, then I would basically copy this and put it into like a notepad. Then of course the next thing you want to do is to create a kind of a description. And what I would do is this. In the description you want to put, your expectations. And I would include the mock-up theme design. Now, if you go with option number 1, which is basically just setting it up and getting somebody to convert it to a basic WordPress theme, you're going to need to know the colors. If you go with option number 2, where you build a built-in control panel, you may not necessarily need to know that information because those colors can be changed later on. So I want to make sure that you understand that clearly. Now, after that, you want to put a brief description of what you want. You want to put your turnaround time, legal information like, you own all rights. Turnaround time, I would say, to be honest, like if you go with option number 1 and just get somebody to convert it to a WordPress theme and you're going to do all the setup later, then from what I found, turnaround time for that is usually 7 days to 14 days. Now, if you go with a premium theme, that has taken about 1 to 1.5 months. And that's just from my experience. Some of you might get a lot faster than me, but what I found, most of it was just bugs, trying to fix those bugs. Then you want to do legal information. You own all rights. Of course, I did that. And then payments, expectations. You don't want to do anything up front. No upfront payments at all. Some people will request they want 20% up front. I wouldn't do it. I would say I don't want to pay anything up front at all because you got to protect yourself and protect your back. You could say something to protect them. You could say no upfront payments, but you can host the theme on your server to let me test it out. When it is 100% free of bugs, then we can make the payment. So that way the theme sits on their server at all times, not your server. And when the work is done, you can make the exchange, and there you go. Payment expectations, and one thing last I would do is put a keyword. You're going to get a lot of spam applicants, so I'll recommend that at the very end of your project description, say something like, if you read this, please put the keyword bacon or something at the top of your application, so I know you read this. And another thing that I put is, please message me first before you bid. Otherwise, I'm going to ignore your bid, because you're going to get a lot of people that will simply bid and they won't even read your mock-up theme instructions or anything. So you want to make sure that somebody contacts you, you message them back and forth, and what I found was the best people ask questions. They want to ask questions to make sure that they're on the same level, they understand everything, and then from that point, they will bid. Those are the types of people you want to look for. So after that, obviously you just want to put the project description up and ignore everybody that doesn't use the keyword bacon or whatever you choose, and just communicate back and forth. Do your due diligence, look for a pattern, make sure that they actually did the design, use everything that I taught you, and you should be able to set yourself up for success.